Can I request that everyone?
The last person who signed on had a lot of background noise.
Yeah, somebody has a fair bit of that noise. Actually, I can mute them, I think. Haha, I did it. Did it work for everyone?
Yep.
Okay. Um, Great. I'd be able to. I hope that these people. No, that's the wrong one. Definitely don't want to silence Tim. Did I just mute Tim? I think I just muted Tim Scully. Um, can he unmute? I think he has to unmute himself. I think you can hear me, Tim. I think you have to unmute yourself. That would be ironic. There we go.
Hey.
Okay.
Great. Um, okay. So I guess we'll start. Thank you all for coming here, and thank you, Tim, for coming and talking to us. I think a lot of people are excited to hear from you directly. So I think that some people know you. I asked people to watch The Sunshine Makers if they had the chance, but maybe a few people don't know exactly who you are, and so uh, I'm going to ask that maybe you can just give a short summary, and then we'll get into some more specific questions about your life and your experiences regarding psychedelics.
Okay. Um, a childhood friend of mine studied Oriental philosophy and got me interested in Aldous Huxley, Taoism, and LSD. And we ended up taking LSD together on April 15th, 1965. And that was a pretty cataclysmic experience. It was like getting struck by lightning because I was on a path to become a government-supported researcher doing math and physics, and I was trying to avoid doing anything that would keep me from getting a security clearance. And all of a sudden, I found myself wanting to make LSD and give it away so everybody could share this amazing experience, which, of course, um, wasn't very compatible with my previous life path. So it took almost a year for me to eventually meet Owsley, who made the acid that I first took. And at the time, he wasn't startlingly interested in taking on an apprentice and making LSD, but he recruited me eventually to do electronics work for the Grateful Dead. And they were traveling with the acid test and Ken Kesey's crew at the time. So that was, in a way, sort of an extended job interview for the job I really wanted. We all took acid together every weekend. And eventually, I ended up working in a lab in Point Richmond with Owsley, who by that time was calling himself Bear Stanley, because one of his first dealers unexpectedly told everyone who made the acid that he was selling. And that made him way more famous than he wanted to be, at least with part of his heart. I mean, he also enjoyed being famous, but he knew it wasn't safe. So Bear took me on as his apprentice in Point Richmond. That was in the fall of 1965. We closed that lab shortly after LSD became illegal in California in October of '66. A state law went into effect then. But we were still pretty convinced that we should make LSD available to anyone who wanted it. At the time, the Vietnam War was going on. Most of us were keenly aware of a lot of environmental disasters that were unfolding slowly already. Of course, we can see a lot more of it now. And most of us also thought that if people took LSD, in addition to being gentler with the planet and not likely being in favor of wars, they probably would be less mean with each other and less greedy. We imagined all of those things would be a result if most people got turned on. So I wanted to go on and make as much LSD as possible, as quickly as possible, because I was pretty convinced that governments around the world would make it impossible to get the raw materials to do it and would make it increasingly illegal. And that sort of happened. It took longer than I thought, but the raw materials got harder and harder to get, and the laws got more and more stringent. I went on and had, I set up, Don and I, Don was my friend who turned me on, the Oriental philosophy student. Don and I set up a lab in Denver, the first Denver lab in 1967. And Bear eventually brought his lysergic acid. He had managed to buy over a pound of it when it was still possible to buy it on the open market in the United States. And lysergic acid is the ideal starting material, which by the end of 1968 became essentially unobtainable. So you had to start from ergot alkaloids instead, like ergotamine tartrate or its relatives, and then hydrolyze it down into lysergic acid and then build that back up into LSD. So in the summer of 67, Bear finally brought his lysergic acid and we converted all of that, making a large amount of LSD. And at that point, we closed up the lab and I set out to want to find more raw material and make more LSD. While Bear went off to tablet what we'd made in Denver. He managed to get busted doing that in late 1967. Unfortunately, that's a long story, but that happened. And in 1968, I set up a second lab in Denver. And while I was off in Europe getting more raw material, that lab got busted. So then I was kind of in a weird position. I just got a lot of raw material in Europe, but I'd lost all my personal possessions and my lab equipment and so on. So I ended up forming a partnership with another chemist, a fellow named Nick Sand, who was one of the main subjects of the Sunshine Makers. So if you saw that film, you had a chance to get to know Nick a little bit. He was very different from me. I mean, I'm pretty introverted and I wanted to give it away, and Nick is very extroverted and he wanted to sell it. Well, we had to sell at least some in order to get the money to buy more raw materials and chemicals, because I couldn't talk anyone. I mean, somebody sending me a message?
Sorry, I think that someone put their screen share on, and
Oh,
it's sort of messing with the video.
oh, got it.
So
Yeah,
if they could please turn that off, that will hopefully return back to normal, so we can.
I think that'd be me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Is it not turning? You could leave it and then rejoin. That might work.
Oh, yeah, probably that would work. Cool.
Okay, so I don't want to take up the whole time just giving you this history. I was supposed to give you a brief intro. So my last lab was in Windsor, which is in California, which I set up jointly with Nick, where I taught him what I'd learned from Bear. And we made over 1 kilo of LSD. Back in those days, a dose was 300 micrograms. So 1 kilo is about 3.6 million doses. And these days it would have been more like 10 million, or maybe 20. The doses now are more like 50 or 100 micrograms, I think. But that was then, and this is now. Anyway, after the Windsor lab was done, and I left, and Nick was finishing his raw material, I was off resting up from my labors. I got busted for the second Denver lab on a fugitive warrant that I didn't know was out there because it was a sealed warrant, a sealed indictment. And so I spent the next few years defending myself in that case. I was facing 56 years in prison if I got convicted on all the charges, and I got the maximum sentence. So that was kind of scary. Fortunately, the Colorado Supreme Court eventually ruled that search was illegal. I heaved a great sigh of relief. And by then I was off making brainwave biofeedback instruments. I'd dropped out from making LSD because I decided I'd gotten a little discouraged because I realized that after 5 years of making LSD and turning on my friends, that while some people had gotten gentler and more aware in the way I'd hoped, it turned out not to be a cure for being an asshole. It turned out not to be a cure for being bad behavior and greed and a lot of other things that I had, overly expected. And at the same time, things had gotten increasingly scary. The penalties kept going up, and the police got better and better at following me. I finally quit in the summer of '70 when I was driving around with a tablet machine in the back of a truck, and I couldn't lose the feds who were following me. Up until then, I'd always been able to lose them. So over the years, they'd learned as I'd been learning, and they finally got ahead of me. So that's 1970 is when I turned to making biofeedback instruments instead, and I didn't have any further involvement in making psychedelics after that. But a few years later, I ended up getting busted for the conspiracy that I'd been involved in earlier years. And there was a big trial that lasted for many months from late '73 into '74, and I got a 20-year sentence from that. And I was able to get out on appeal bond for a while, but eventually got sent to McNeil Island to serve the bulk of my sentence. And I had done a lot of community service work while I was out on appeal bond. And I did a lot of community service work while I was in prison. So I was able to get my sentence reduced to 10 years. And I eventually got out of prison and got paroled and went back to making biofeedback instruments, and then got involved in writing software, because by then I was making computerized biofeedback instruments. So that's sort of my story. But you probably have questions.
Yeah, thank you for the brief overview. I think that there's probably more questions than we have time for. I asked people to bring some, but I guess for me, like one of my questions that I felt was unanswered, is throughout this process of making those large quantities of LSD. I would just imagine that. I guess it's a question: is how much paranoia did you and the people around you feel, because today, and over the past, 40 or probably 50 years, the attitude from government and from lawmakers towards those drugs has gotten stricter until recently. Maybe it's gotten a little more lax, and it's hard to imagine, how just like how you end up making such large quantities of the drug and staying sane in the process of just not too afraid of getting in trouble.
Well, we started getting followed by federal agents in late 1966. The first time I went to pick up a load of chemicals, the load of chemicals came with the free bonus of federal agents trying to follow us. So I pretty much knew Don, my friend Don and I both knew that the chances were really high that we were going to end up getting busted. But at the time, we thought that what we were doing was really important. We were intoxicated with the belief that we might be doing something that could save the world. And, we didn't succeed in what we were doing in the end, but we were really hoping that we could turn a lot of disasters around that we could see coming, stave off some of the wars and environmental disasters and political and economic meanness that's unfolded since. So we were intoxicated by the belief that what we were doing was really important, and that, if we could do enough of it, it would be worth it if we ended up getting busted. But yeah, of course, we were scared a lot of the time.
Yeah. I guess alongside that is, do you have any thoughts about what it is about LSD or the content, the set and setting that might make some people may have those types of realizations that change their behavior and maybe ultimately change the world, and what was missing for people that didn't have that transformation?
Well, one of the things that Bear and I disagreed with from the beginning was that he was into the Dionysian drug, sex, and rock and roll version of taking acid. So he wanted to travel with the Grateful Dead and the acid test, and he wanted to turn people on at rock and roll dances and at acid tests. And I was much more into, my friend Don and I were more into the Apollonian side of it. We wanted to get high sitting in front of a fireplace or in the woods in a quiet setting with one or two people with the intention of having a spiritual experience as opposed to partying. But the partying aspect of it ended up winning out all too often in terms of what people did with it in the scene. So that's part of it. I mean, I'm not against people having a party. It's just I don't think that that's going to. I don't think that's going to lead to saving the world. So I think that enough people had the kinds of experiences that I hoped they would, that I think we might have influenced some of the positive social changes that have unfolded. I think there's more racial, sexual, and economic equality now than there was back then. There's certainly more people aware of those issues. They're more in the front of public consciousness than they were. But it's obvious just looking at the political scene in a country today that the red states won and the blue states lost. And I tend to think in terms of the blue states as being somewhat more psychedelicized. But even amongst the people in the blue states, a lot of people got off into the sidetrack of being selfish and wanting more money and bigger cars and fancier houses and nicer vacations. And I don't know. I mean, it's clear that just taking a psychedelic drug isn't enough. I mean, we just scattered it to the four winds thinking that it would be enough. And that was a very naive belief. That clearly controlling the set and setting or having good guides might have been a better way of ensuring that a larger number of people had more spiritual experiences. But even if people have spiritual experiences, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to integrate them into their lives, in their everyday behavior. I mean, Nick Sand, who was my lab partner in my last lab, had spiritual experiences, but he still had a lot of bad behaviors. Well, I mean, I'm not perfect either, but I mean, Nick was a lot harder edged person than I am. So it's complicated, and I think you have to have some intentions of wanting to improve yourself. I mean, it's that taking a psychedelic and having a spiritual experience can give you an idea that there's something out there that it's worth working toward, but you have to decide to work toward it and do something in your everyday life. When I was in prison, I had a chance to do Zen meditation and Tai Chi and other practices on a regular basis, and I thought those were good things. When I got making biofeedback instruments was interesting because I found that there are brainwave patterns that are associated, that people who are skilled meditators show, that are somewhat different from those of ordinary people. And if you learn to produce those brainwaves, it can help if you're trying to learn to meditate, although you can also learn to produce those brainwaves without learning to meditate. But it can be helpful, and there are fewer pitfalls there. That's a long-winded answer.
Yeah, I guess those were my two questions. I was hoping to let some other people get some questions in, so I'll leave it up to the other 18 people here to ask something.
Maybe we can start a list.
Hello? I can't hear you.
She was saying, I think maybe we could start a list.
Oh yeah, maybe if you want to just type the question in the chat.
Yeah, I saw one typed question earlier that I tried to answer, but I don't see one right now.
Well, I guess I can lead us forward a little bit. It does seem to me like recently there's been this return in psychedelic medicine. I guess we got a question.
Yes, somebody wanted to know if I ever went to see the Grateful Dead. I lived with them and traveled with them for about 6 months in early 1966. For somebody introverted like me, that was a really interesting experience. I lost my virginity and lost my aversion to rock and roll dances. But they were neat guys, a neat family of people. I mean, it was not just the band, but the ladies who were traveling with them and other folks. So yes, that was interesting. But in the rest of my life, before and after that, my personal preference is more to listen to classical music than rock and roll, though my horizons have been broadened a little, but I'm still not a big rock and roll fan. I think I have a touch of Asperger's, so that big crowd scenes are uncomfortable for me.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, I got part of the question at least. It was only up for a minute. I was asked what I think about scenes where people experience trauma. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I'm not very in favor of mob scenes like rock and roll dances as a venue for people to have their first psychedelic experience, because it's too conducive to getting frightened and confused and so on. And, fortunately, there are people, support systems that have grown up to try to help people who run into trouble. Most of the people who have bad experiences get over them when they come down, but I've been contacted by some people who are damaged by taking drugs, psychedelics, who have ongoing psychiatric issues. And I feel bad about that. I feel very bad about that. Unfortunately, they seem to be a small minority, but it's still a real issue. And when I was at a showing of the Sunshine Makers with Mike Randall, who still believes that everybody should take LSD, there was somebody in the audience who clearly had psychiatric issues and who's not a good candidate for taking acid, who asked whether he should take it. And I said, I don't think so. And Michael at the same time was saying, oh, sure, everybody should. So there's room for some disagreement there.
And then we had, I don't know if you saw the next one, but someone asked about how you feel about microdosing, which has become more popular. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a totally different way of approaching it, and I don't know. I hope it works out. I don't because I have 5 felony convictions. I don't feel safe to take any drugs now, because any penalties for me getting in trouble would be a lot harsher than for an average person without a lot of felony convictions. So the closest I could say that I've come to microdosing was working in a lab where you're exposed to acid all the time. And because you build up a tolerance, it's a low level sort of an experience, but it goes on for weeks at a time. That was an interesting state. I have nothing against microdosing, but I don't feel qualified to comment on it beyond that.
So then the next question was, what kept you motivated to do such a large project? Did you have any doubts as you did it? Did you want to help people before you did LSD, or did it just encourage you to do this?
It was sort of taking acid for me the first time was sort of a conversion experience. Years later, when I was dodging grand jury subpoenas, I ran into some evangelical Christians in Zurich, Switzerland, and I saw the same gleam in their eye that I used to have in mine. And I've run into people who got into that same state of consciousness through passionate political beliefs too. I think there's a state that the human mind can get into. You can have a peak experience as a result of, taking a psychedelic, of having a conventional religious experience. As some people have peak experiences during political activity of some kind or another, and they end up, like me, they can end up then for years wanting to share that experience with other people and having a passionate belief that they know what the path is to save the world, as I thought I did, and really being motivated to want to share that with everyone. And during that time, there's a process of selective attention that goes on where you notice all the things that reinforce your belief, and you tend to not notice all the things that would disabuse you of that belief. And so you can end up doing it for a long time. And some people, Nick was much more of a believer of the end justified the means, and he could rationalize lying and cheating and doing pretty mean things to his friends in the service of his goals. And other people could justify killing people in the name of their political or religious belief. So, that's how it can go on for a long time. I'm really sorry to be mean, but I only have another minute or two before I have another commitment.
Okay, I guess.
One more question?
Yeah, we'll do one more question. The last one was, how does large-scale synthesis of a complex molecule like lysergic acid diethylamide differ from small-scale lab synthesis?
Well, of course, the technology that I used back in my day I used the Garbeck method, which was intended for relatively small batches. So even when I was making a lot of acid, I ran it. The largest single batch I ever ran was 50 grams. So I tended to run a lot of batches and then have a recycling loop running in the background to recycle the iso-LSD. But I guess one big difference between just running one tiny batch and running a series of batches is that that it's much more worthwhile to run the recycling loop to recover the iso-LSD that otherwise might get discarded. There's newer technology now where people are running a kilo at a time in one batch, but I don't know all the details of that. So I think I have to run, but it was nice getting to see you folks. I'm sorry I didn't have more time.
No worries. Yes, thank you so much for joining us and talking. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, if there were questions I didn't answer, you could email them, and I'll try to get to them when I can.
Okay, sounds good. We will do that if anyone has questions.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye bye. People leaving. We can still. People are all leaving. I was gonna hang out with people.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell people to come back because we can talk. We can have sort of a meeting. I'm hearing everyone other than Tim come back. We can all talk. Okay. What's going on? Who's there? Who's here still? I see Cam. Cam's big.
Hey, Graham. How's it going, man?
It's good. It's weird, you know. How are you?
Cool.
Yeah, that was cool. I'm glad that he could make some time for it.
How'd you get in contact with him?
I just Googled his email. And email.
Cool.
Nice.
That was so great.
That was awesome. Yeah. Hi everyone. Who's here? Let me take a look.
One of 28 in the call.
I see Lily. I see Mahir. I see Seven. All right. This is Skype. Skype's weird. So how are you guys? What's going on? What are you up to in this apocalyptic scenario?
Oh wait, yeah. Me and Will had this idea of like this would be the best setting ever. Not the best setting ever, but this would be a very valuable setting to go on a trip because of these like circumstances, and it was actually fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that just be scary?
It was kind of scary at times, but then like it was like, oh yeah, it's nature, and you're like part of nature. It's you don't rule over it, so it can kill you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's like even you know you might think it would be scary, and it might be scary, but like they use psychedelics often with terminal cancer patients, and like it often helps them sort of overcome that fear in many ways. And so maybe we should all use acid to overcome our fear of coronavirus, right?
I mean,
I find
last week I split up like 4 friends. Pretty fun.
nice. I find them helpful during transition periods. Sets your mind open again to new things.
Yeah, that seems to be. I agree. They help you adjust to new ways of living.
Yeah. Cool.
Wait, I did try. My first trip was after like a week, a month after I got to the US.
Mm.
And that was, yeah. Now I'm remembering that, like, yeah, that is actually true. I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, that's what it seems like. It kind of even on the sort of neurological level, it sort of switches the flow of information in the brain from like normally there's a lot of top-down processing. So like your idea of who you are and of how the world works informs the way you experience the world. But under the influence of psychedelics, that gets reversed, and the information coming from the world actually transforms those higher level constructs of how you think about the world. And so like to me that makes sense that you would act like that would change the way you are, because it's sort of, I mean, what I think what changes is it's adjusting to new information, to new settings, new contexts. I mean, that's evolution. It's the same spirit that underlies evolution.
Yeah. My friend had 2 grams of mushrooms the other day, and she felt nothing actually. Just an interesting note.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Weird.
Say, I don't know if people can hear me. This is not Steve. I'm borrowing his laptop.
Yes.
Cool.
I thought it was this is Sam. I thought it was very valuable. Definitely commend Tim. Just like I didn't realize I'd seen the Sunshine Makers, but I think it was a while ago, and I'd forgotten that. I feel like they knew pretty early on that they were being trailed, and I think he deserves some respect for, I think, understanding the potential consequences and still going through with everything he did because he felt that it was for the greater good. So I just thought that hearing that, I think definitely gave me a little bit of hope for humanity, kind of like an aside, but I thought that was very, very meaningful.
Yeah. He's got such an interesting life.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I found like what he had to say about sort of like why it didn't work to the extent that him and the others like imagined it might. I thought that was very valuable because I still like at times I sense the same, and maybe I myself like think that way. In that sort of like think in a utopian way about psychedelics, but sort of, I mean, what he experienced was that that's not always the way that it works out, and that maybe there's some other things at play to actually, get those sorts of effects and transformations.
But I thought it was like interesting how he talked about people not putting it into practice after it's come down, So if people aren't willing to actually make the changes that they saw, then that's where the problem is. That's why nothing's changing,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder how you can instill that in people, like not discipline really, but more motivation to have active change. That's hard to teach. Drugs don't really teach you that.
I like the like religious use of psychedelics. Like there's very very few religions in the world that do that, but I like how they religiously like they seem to be like they seem to be trying to make people into a better person, and all of the religious uses I have seen.
Agreed.
That's really interesting. It does seem like it's sort of like they approach it from that perspective. I mean, well, religions in general, I think part of their focus is like, how can people be better, be better people. Although of course it depends on which religion and who's, probably more it depends on who that religious leader is within the religion. But I think that's
true.
Yeah, but that's why I've been thinking a lot about how it's potentially important to sort of people have all these mystical and religious experiences on psychedelics, but then maybe they're confused about what to do with them. And I think that nesting the experiences within the context of religious stories is a really useful tool for carrying over the sort of profound experiences into long-term transformations in behavior. So I've been writing a paper about that idea, and how it would theoretically be implemented.
Yeah, wait. Yeah, when you said that it also depends on the like religious leader, that's true. Like there have been like cults or psychedelics too. Yeah, I just want to like take back my statement that all the religious or religion-like things have done it for positive use. People have used it to like brainwash people.
This is true.
Yeah.
What's your timeline for the paper, Graham?
It's by the end of the semester. It's for an independent study that I'm doing.
That's very cool. Definitely share it.
I will when it's done. It's really taking on more. It's not just that's a big piece of it, but then in addition, that it's relating those, basically relating the meta narratives of comparative religious work to the neurophysiology of psychedelics, and well, of neurophysiology in general, but and then basically trying to articulate how psychedelics, what's the relationship between people taking psychedelic drugs, the underlying neurology, and then the religious narratives that arise around the world, and hoping to find some useful parallels for people. I have on Monday, I have an interview for, there's a researcher in Berkeley, California, who's starting a trial with treating chronic shame with MDMA, doing MDMA psychotherapy. And
oh wow, over shame.
So I'm gonna do an interview with them and sort of hear some more about what they're doing, and then potentially get a position helping as either as a grad student or a research assistant.
I'm surprised they would use MDMA for that, not to knock people with traumatic shame, but I would think the neurotoxicity would kind of outweigh that problem, but I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I believe that when MDMA is pure and when in controlled doses, and people sort of do it in a setting where they're not getting dehydrated and
not 300 milligrams in a rave.
Yeah, 300 milligrams twice in a rave. That they're not. That it's not particularly I actually believe it's not neurotoxic if it's done. I think it's below 2 milligrams per kilogram body weight, and it's actually MDMA.
Cool.
That's a big if. And if you don't do it more than once every 3 months, that's the other.
That's the big part.
I'm kind of trying to take it a different direction, so I apologize if I'm bringing it a different way. But I just kind of going back to, you guys were talking about how people in historical religious contexts wanted to use it to make people better, and that definitely seems like that was Tim's goal, was to use it to make people more environmentally conscious, more aware of certain disparities in power that existed. And I wish that I had been able to ask him. I was typing it, but I'm a slow typer and I didn't get it out in time. And I wanted to be able to ask him precisely why he thinks that the federal government and sort of systems at large want to repress the use of these kind of compounds. I wish I could be able to get his perspective on that, like why exactly he thinks that the government doesn't want people taking them.
That'd be one to email to him. I'm sure.
Yeah, I actually had like a question very much like that. It also revolved around like that period. It was like, so I have only lived in the world with the drug culture where like every drug is like just considered to be bad. Like the only way I knew there was any kind of good use for LSD was like online, right? And like in the corners of the internet. So I was just thinking that before this effort was made by the government, before like millions of dollars were pushed into this drug war, was there a period where some of the drugs were just looked at through like a scientific perspective?
Opium in China was widely celebrated for a while. I know that, among poor or rich, it was just a great time to smoke some opium. That's the only example I could give you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we can think about alcohol and nicotine.
That's true.
And caffeine in the U.S. and try and imagine what it would be like if psychedelics, were treated similarly to those. But still, I think it never was exactly the same, because even when they were illegal in the 60s and they were being used, they sort of had a powerful energy, like they were charged with this sort of numinous is the word that sort of means like religious and mystical energy, because people were having those experiences, and like Aldous Huxley's description of it, like certainly popularized the idea of psychedelics as sort of having those types of effects. And so that, I think it was never exactly like the casual thing that alcohol and caffeine and nicotine are. And I think that part of what went wrong in the 60s and 70s is that it did become like people started using it as if it were as casual and weren't treating it as if it was sacred. And that's sort of what Tim was saying. I think when he was saying that people started using it in party settings, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I found it really interesting how he referenced Owsley's use of it and Nick's use of it, and how he distanced himself from
from the culture.
How he was talking about like Nick, especially like how he was like saying that he like wasn't the best guy type of thing, and that he was still an asshole afterwards. It's been a while since I saw the Sunshine Makers, but I think I'd forgotten that fact that Nick was an asshole.
Yeah, he seems very down to earth with himself, just the way he spoke.
Yeah, and I'd never looked at it that way, especially with being a Grateful Dead fan myself. Owsley, I'd never seen that. Maybe that may have contributed to the downfall of psychedelics as a whole. I thought that was an interesting point of view.
Mm.
Seeing his butt also did not improve my impression of him.
His butt?
Yeah, he appears naked throughout the movie.
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah, Nick naked throughout most of that movie.
Yeah, and just stretching, like for some reason.
Yeah, he's a weird dude.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't seen that just as I woke up.
Yeah, I went to rewatch it before this meeting, and I actually found it's not on Netflix anywhere. They'd recently taken it off. It was a shame.
Yeah.
I had to rent it.
I'll send. I found a link to it today. Adam told me that they were out of that it wasn't on Netflix anymore, and so I have a link which is of questionable legality, but I doubt that's.
I don't think this club is very in tune with the legality of things.
Yeah, I don't think.
I tried to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, have fun, guys. Have fun. I also gotta go because I have like work. I have an exam today.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have fun quarantining. Peace out.
Yeah. I guess we're down to quite a small number of people. Why don't we stop at 6:30? Unless more people, if more people leave, then I'm stopping it. But we can talk 6 people.
What was that thing you said about the retreat?
About which thing?
The hike.
Oh, I was just wondering if potentially at some point we could all get together somewhere and do a hike and keep our distance, but
yeah, sooner than later. It's been 3 weeks since I've seen anyone but my roommates.
Oh no, probably going crazy. Yeah.
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 Talking online is one thing with my friends, but
it's different.
Faces. I want to see faces.
Yeah, people got to get out, because I've met with a few of my friends from high school, and it's just like it just revived to see people in person and be outside.
Yeah. Where's
Everyone's
you guys around? I'm near
say that again.
I'm near Blue Hills. Like I'm right outside Boston. There's like Blue Hills is the local like hiking spot. I was wondering if you guys were near Blue Hills or like.
We're back at Amber.
Yeah, I'm close to Amber.
Oh, word.
What else is here? Who's in it? Cam Cam's still here.
Hi, Graham.
Oh, hi, Cam. Are you in Amherst?
No, I'm back home.
You're back home. Yeah.
There's food here.
Yeah. That's
You
right.
know, I was about to do that too, but easy.
Yeah. I've been home. I've been cooking a lot. And baking.
Graham, I've been thinking about your mac and cheese.
Oh man. Maybe I'll make it soon.
Have you tried making banana bread, Graham?
I haven't recently. Yeah, it's a long time ago I did, but not since.
Great.
Yeah, I made. What did I make? I made sourdough bread.
Ooh.
Yeah, I fermented the mother, as it's called a mother when you make sourdough bread. Before, and then I made pierogies from scratch, which is a Polish potato dumpling for those who don't know. And then Pierogies. I'll send pictures to I'm gonna send pictures of all my food to the Psychedelic group chat.
Ooh, that looks interesting.
And then I made rogalach, which is a sort of a cookie. That was the best.
It was better.
It was better than
any rogalach.
real regular rogalach. And then right now I'm in the midst of making a chocolate cake with almond buttercream frosting.
Ooh.
Yeah. You guys should cook too. It's fun.
Hey, that looks doable, the pierogies.
The pierogies, yeah. They're not too hard.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Can I replace cheddar cheese like with other cheese? With a mixture of I forgot what it was, but like a mix of Mexican cheese.
Yeah, you could use. I mean, Lily says no. Lily, you're muted.
It won't work.
Yeah. I used ricotta when I made mine, and sort of did a ricotta potato mixture, and that was good. I didn't use cheddar cheese, but Mexican, I don't know. I was gonna say it would be fine, but Lily disagrees.
I think it'll be fine.
I mean, what do I have to lose other than my stomach?
Right.
Can't be that bad.
Mexican mix. No, it's probably just means like a Mexican 3 cheese mix. I'll send a picture of all these things. What else? What are you guys doing? What have you been spending all your time doing?
I've been way too many drugs.
Too many drugs?
Yeah. I'm doing the DMT. It was bad. I had a bad time.
Bad.
What?
Why was it bad?
It was just like all red, and it was just like, you're dying, like the world is dying. I was like, oh God, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, that sounds unpleasant.
It wasn't.
I had my first experience too. It was not pleasant either.
A bad time to be doing it, maybe.
Yeah, I know people who have like smoked it, had like an amazing positive experience, and then like the same day smoked it again and had a horrible experience. And
What is that?
I have no idea. It makes no sense. It's just not consistent.
Yeah.
How different is DMT than magic mushrooms?
It's basically like if everything in the magic mushroom hit you all at once.
And beyond, I feel like.
Yeah, it's beyond that, yeah.
people often like people who have done like mushrooms or have done like ayahuasca, like when they smoke DMT, I actually have it reversed. People who have smoked DMT, when they go do mushrooms or ayahuasca, they'll be like, "Oh, I was here before when I did DMT." This is happened slower now. Especially, I mean, that's with ayahuasca and DMT mostly because they're really the same thing. But people talk about ayahuasca often as if it's slowed down DMT.
I've heard that it's actually more intense because it's like a drawn out DMT, so it's like intense but for like a long time.
Interesting. I most of the things I've heard have said that it's less intense but longer duration. So definitely longer duration, but less like smoking DMT is like it's just like I don't know. I mean, it's like you dive into the deep end, you know.
Yeah.
But you come right back. Yeah.
I'd say I'm really interested to try like both mescaline and ayahuasca someday.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to. They're on my list.
Yeah. What I've been doing a lot during this break is I've been watching a lot of Curb Your Enthusiasm and dabbing a lot.
Curb Your Enthusiasm is great. I've been watching it too. Very funny.
Is that on HBO only or?
Yes, but you can find it elsewhere.
On Prime.
On Prime.
Yeah.
Is it? I didn't even know that.
You've wanted to see that.
Yeah, it's so funny. I love Curb.
Ah, that hurts.
Are you okay?
I'm okay now.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out my online classes and like I missed an exam yesterday and had to get it reopened like twice.
Yikes.
Gee.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are the online classes for everyone else? I feel like they're okay. They're just lame.
Oh yeah.
You should.
I can't care anymore.
Same. It's hard to.
Started off this morning just like rotating my body, picking up my laptop and taking my class just under my covers.
Yeah. I take most of them in bed.
Yeah, I'm saying.
I'm
you
in bed
took
right
the
now.
meeting in bed too, Graham. Like I was like, yep, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Get out. That's what I recommend is go out and be in nature for as long as you can. That helps so much. It was like going insane the other day, and then I went into the woods and just like breathed for an hour, and it was like insane how much better. I was just anxious. I was inside, and I was like, just like yeah. And then nature soothed me.
Me too. I went on a walk, like an hour walk. I live on a lake and just walked around the entire lake right before this, completely sober. And it was just like, even that was like a psychedelic experience. There's so many people outside.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
There's for those of you who are in the area, there's an amazing, the Chesterfield Gorge is a great place to go. It's kind of far, I feel like. It's probably 35 to 40 minutes from that's not that far, but that's a really good one. There's a really beautiful sort of like gorge. I don't know. It's like a very high, there's like a rock face that's sort of sheer, and I was there, and it was like the golden sunlight was lighting up the whole river, and it was so cool, very beautiful. I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere on Saturday with a friend called, I guess there's a place called Arches, which has some formations, some geological formations. I'll report back. Or maybe I'll invite people. I'd have to see what my friends want to do.
Word. I just looked up the Chesterfield Gorge. The place looks awesome.
Yeah, Chesterfield Gorge is dope.
Have you ever been to Mountain Park? It's in like Hadley. It's like ski mountain. It's really cool.
I don't think I've been there. All right, guys. I'm gonna head out. Thanks for coming. Good to see you guys.
Wait, Graham, before you go,
Yeah.
I see that you're recording the call. I missed like most of the Tim Scully part of the call. Is there anywhere you could post this or email it so I could check that out?
I absolutely will. I will stop recording it. Right